Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's August 27th, 2024, and I want to call to order the KPPA Audit Committee meeting scheduled for this quarter. To start, let's have our opening statement. Michael, can you do that?
Yes, sir. This is a meeting of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority Audit Committee. This meeting is being broadcast via video teleconference pursuant to Kentucky Revised Statute Section 61.826 and may be viewed by the public at the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority offices located at 1260 Louisville Road in Frankfort, Kentucky. It is also being broadcast to the public via Facebook. If you are speaking and not appearing by video, please identify yourself before talking. In the event the video or audio broadcast is interrupted, we will attempt to reestablish a connection. If a connection cannot be reestablished within 30 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled to another date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rankin, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. O'Meara?
Here.
Mr. Cheatham?
Here.
Miss Eves? Mr. Fulkerson?
Here.
Miss Hampton?
Here.
And Mr. Summers?
Here.
Thank you.
And is there any public comment?
No, sir, no public comment today.
Okay, thank you. I do want to welcome two additional members to the committee, J.T. Fulkerson for CERS and Ms. Eves for the KRS system. So we look forward to working with the new members in addition to those that have always been on the committee lately. And we appreciate everybody's commitment and time. First thing to do would be have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting held on May 30th, 2024, please.
Make a motion that the minutes be approved as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Having first and second, are there any discussion, any corrections needed? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Thank you. That motion is adopted and accepted. Next, we go to external audit updates, and we have two guests here, Sonia Heath and Lakita Short, to talk about the internal audit self-assessment with external validation. Kristen, would you want to give us a introduction?
I can do that. Good morning, everyone. So several months ago, for those who were on the committee, internal audit presented the results of our self-assessment. A part of that was to have another set of individuals come in and review the work we had done and go over it to see if they agreed with the assessment or if they had other information that they wanted, that they felt the audit committee should know. So we have the individuals who performed that that review are here today to go over what they found. So I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Sonia, and let her give her presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure to work with Kristen and her staff, as well as meeting with members of management and the audit committee in order to perform this independent external validation. I guess I should back up a bit and introduce myself. Sonia Heath. I'm an internal auditor with Humana. I'm also a member of the Institute of Internal Auditors, active with the Louisville chapter, which is how we came to do the independent validation for Kentucky Public Pensions Authority. Lakita Short worked with me on that assessment. Kristen provided us everything that they used in their self-assessment, and we worked to validate that. As part of that, we also interviewed and met with members of management, Mr. O'Meara, and others. We believe that Kristen and her staff generally conform with the standards that the Institute of Internal Auditors has for internal audit shops. That was our opinion. This was higher than the opinion they had given themselves, because part of where they had deemed themselves as lacking was they didn't have that independent external validation, which by us performing that, we were able to bump up their rating. You have any questions over the report that was submitted?
Well, I would like to thank both you and Lakita for conducting the external validation as it is best practice to do that. We have not had it in a few years. We want to start having that on a regular basis. And we appreciate your time and efforts in order to go through the process, and very pleased with the results. So we want to thank you very much. Oh, yes, Lynn Hampton has her hand up.
Yeah, my question is sort of what's next? There's a list of things that are comply and sort of comply. Those kind of things. Are we at the point right now, and maybe both Sonia and Kristen can answer, that we should start working on including these sort of things in the annual plan for internal audit? Just sort of what's the best next steps?
So I'll jump in and answer that. So yes, we're already working on those areas, the items that were opportunities for improvement. We're already working on and incorporating those, and we will provide an update. We can provide it at each meeting, or we can do it on an annual basis, whatever the committee would prefer.
Yes, my opinion would be maybe just a written report that you can say, and it's just something to keep so that we know what's going on, and you keep focused on. Let me make the presentation, but I think that would be those 2 pages, something like maybe another column or something on those 2 pages.
We can do that. So I think the things we're already working on, we'll have an update on that. We can have that at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you do a good job of things that you use color, whatever you do, you all do a good job of making the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is best practice to have this external validation every 3 years, every 5 years? What is recommended?
I believe that the standards state every 5 years.
Does the committee wish to consider making a motion for us to adopt that as our best practice, to have the external validation at least every 5 years?
I would think that'd be a wise move at a minimum.
And so
I was wondering.
are you
I was
making a
wondering-
motion, Lyle?
It is, that is currently written into the audit charter to have this done in 5 years.
Okay, it's already included.
Yeah.
Okay, so no need for that then. All right, do I have any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I want to say thank you very much again, Sonia and Lakita. We appreciate all the time and the effort, and pleased with the report. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Next is the overview of FY24 external audit. We have Ryan Graham from Blue & Company. Need any introduction or setup with that, Kristen?
Ryan was the individual who was here. So in the previous year, the APA came in and did the audit, but the year before it was Blue & Company, and Ryan was a part of that team. So I believe all the trustees who were there then are familiar with Ryan, but I will turn it over to him and let him introduce himself. And I think he's just going to give an overview of of the plan for the external audit this year, a timeline, just the general idea of what's going to be covered.
Yep. Good morning. Thanks, Kristen and Bill, and everybody else. We are just starting to dig in. We have been on site a couple of weeks ago to start census data testing and some of the other procedures that we do on site, benefit payment testing, so on and so forth. The next big step will be getting a draft of the financial section of the AGFR. I think that's coming in the next week or so. So looking forward to seeing that. We'll probably come back on site once that's provided to us, working towards the deliverable date and final deliverable date in November. So we're still very early in the beginning processes of it, but have made good headway so far.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the committee for Ryan? Hearing none. I know
Thank
that, yes, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you.
Sure.
Feel free
Thanks
to
so
reach
much.
out anytime you want any questions you have along the way. We're always available.
Appreciate it. And we look forward to the results. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30, 2024. And Michael Lamb, would you want to take that?
Sure. Presented are the 4 basic financial statements. Actually, Blue and Company hasn't even seen these yet. They're expecting the draft of these financials and the entire financial section of the ACFR next week. This is the new presentation. It is still in its infancy. There are some things that we're going to discuss with Blue and Company about the presentation of some of the line items on these financial statements. As you know, we're doing 2 ACFRs, and so this is what your balance sheet or your statement of position would be for the C statements right here, with pension and insurance combined and a total balance. And also this year, because we're doing 2 ACFRs, we don't have a comparative column. So there's not a 2023 column out there like you've seen in the past. And that's because we didn't have an audited 2023 balance just for C and just for K. So it would be not appropriate to put them in the audited financial statements. If you page down to the next page is the statement of changes. And again, with the combination of pension and insurance on the same statement, there's a lot of open white space in there, some line items that in looking at the entirety of the CERS total may not be material for presentation. So we're going to discuss that internally as well with our externals about maybe combining some of those line items to give the financial statements a little cleaner look. And then if you page down, you'll see the statement of position for the KRS systems. That one includes state police. We did note when we do comparative numbers in the next year's ACFR, this statement will likely go on to a landscape format because of the spacing with the 3 plans in the KRS system. And then if you page down again, you'll see the statement of net position for the KRS system. And that's all I wanted to present to you today. I am open to comments if you guys want to look at this as the audit committee. Any changes that you recommend, anything that looks odd or you want to talk about, we're open to taking this opportunity to have these financial statements look the way we want them to look for each system.
I have a question with Lynn.
On the not having comparative information, is there any sense that it would be proper or improper to have an unaudited statement? We have the numbers. We know we basically could fiddle with them, I guess, and create unaudited numbers. But I'm as much interested in doing the same thing myself, of reading it with comparative statements. But also, is there anything from GASB or even GFOA and the certificate that would say we should have an unaudited comparative statements for the prior year?
So I'm going to answer that in two ways. Actually, common practice in the governmental financial statements is not to show comparative in the audited ones. However, we like having comparative in there, and so we are going to put a 2023 total in the MD&A portion of the financial statement. So the MD&A is not audited, and that has more summary data. And so we'll put a 2024 and a 2023 column in the MD&A for comparative purposes.
Very good answer. Thank you.
Help me, does anyone else have their hand up?
Miss Eves, and I do want to notate that she did come into the meeting during the internal self-audit portion of the meeting, and I just failed to note that.
Well, welcome, Mary.
You're on mute, Miss Eves. Miss Eves, you're on mute.
Thank you, Sherry, and I apologize for being a few minutes late. I had technical difficulties getting in, but I'm in now. When will the external audit be completed, or what's the time frame for it?
So the external audit is planned to be completed in November, with your December board meetings being the approval date for so the C system will have their board meeting and will approve their audit report. And the K system will have their board meeting in December to approve their audit report. And then the KPPA meeting will have the board approve those for publication. And at that time, we will put them onto the website and we'll have a draft copy to the Office of Finance at the Commonwealth. But yeah, late November, early December is the time frame.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Chilton next?
Yes, good morning. Just to clarify, we're going to have separate SAFRs this year, or ACFRs, which is the detailed annual report. But the summary report we're still doing in one document, is that correct?
That is correct. The SAFR will be one combined document as it has been in the past. There is no GASB guidance or governing body that necessarily dictates how those should be presented. So it's really up to management. And for this fiscal year, we have concluded to continue to do that as a combined document.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions? Am I missing anyone? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate the presentation and going into the new presentation, working with the external auditors on that. Thank you very much. Let's see. Next, we'll go to legal updates, information disclosure incidents. Ms. Bass.
Good morning. I am here to briefly go over the disclosure and breach report for the last quarter, the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2024. And Sherry, if you could go ahead and go to the next page, I'll get to the heart of the matter. During the last quarter, there was one security breach of member information that implicated Kentucky state law, and there were 3 disclosures that implicated the KPPA's data disclosure notification policy. And that first state law security breach was an incident that involved a bad actor outside of the KPPA obtaining confidential information relevant to a member that allowed that person to then access the member's online self-service retirement account and make some banking changes. The 3 incidents that implicated only the KPPA's data disclosure notification policy, they essentially all involve some sort of mail issue. And then finally, regarding disclosures or breaches that were caused by a KPPA vendor, we received one notification from a vendor that a security breach occurred in December 2023 and impacted 19 members. And in that situation, an unauthorized third party was able to use information obtained from other sources to log onto web pages associated with the vendor and view some limited access about those 19 members. Does anyone have any questions here?
That was an outside vendor.
That is correct.
Do they follow the same procedures of notifying the people and setting up
Yes, they provided notification to all 19 impacted members and instituted additional security measures to prevent this from happening on a larger scale or reoccurring in the future.
Good.
Was it our members that were targeted, or?
I don't have any information that would indicate that KPPA members were targeted. We only get information relevant to KPPA members. So for example, if the incident impacts 200 individuals that have sensitive information on file with a vendor, but only 20 of those are KPPA members, generally vendors don't tell us it impacted 200 people, only 20 of them were yours. They just give us the number that are our responsibility.
Was this medical or pension payment?
The incident with the vendor involved some kind of not pension, but not exactly medical information. It's kind of a in-between area. So that's going to be your web-based databases and apps that contain some health information that an individual has input into that app or web page. But some information that comes from a health insurance provider, it's kind of I'm trying to think, I think the Go365 is maybe Keep version of this, but Living Well is maybe Keep's version of this. I can't remember what they call it, I apologize, but it's kind of like a database to kind of track preventative measures that you've taken or, preventative care appointments as part of the enrollment in the health insurance plan.
So this is a HIPAA violation?
That one I do not know. So the apps are a kind of a developing area. So some of them are clearly like a My Chart, for example, is something that a lot of people are familiar with, where individuals can log on and see their lab results, their test results, their screening results, follow-up notes from a medical provider. That stuff is clearly covered by HIPAA. But these apps that are kind of like, how many steps I walked today, I got my twice annual dental cleaning, where the individual inputs the information in order to receive like points or as part of a club, something like that. So a little bit of a gray area, but there are some federal regulations that are coming up to speed on that will essentially treat those apps a lot like a HIPAA situation.
But at this point, you don't view this as a HIPAA issue?
I don't think that it is. We did not get that degree of detail from the vendor.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for monitoring this and reporting. That seems to be very pervasive all over. So we do have to be vigilant. Any other questions for Ms. Bass? All right, hearing none. Stephanie Holt, would you want to go over the anonymous tips, please?
Sure. Good morning. I'm the investigator in the Office of Legal Services, and I'm here to provide the information related to the fraud tips received since you all had the last audit committee meeting held in May. We received 5 new tips, and we were able to close 2 of them after conducting a thorough review. 3 tips remain open for additional investigation or monitoring, and that leaves us currently with 8 open tips. 4 of those relate to allegations of prearranged agreements. 3 involve employer reporting, and 1 involves allegations of disability retirement fraud. You can go down to the next page, Sherry, too. And then we were able to close 5 of the cases that were open as of the last audit meeting. 3 were closed as unsubstantiated following investigation. 1 was closed because it involved only Social Security fraud allegations, and 1 was closed after review, and we made multiple attempts to contact the tipster for additional information and we never received a response. So we closed that one out as they were just general allegations and nothing that we could act upon or do any further review. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Have any questions for Mrs. Ho? All right. Thank you for your report. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to updates. And Miss Kristen Coffey, can you take that for us?
I can do that. Sherry, if you can go to page 31, I'm actually going to start there. Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to go over today is the risk assessment and the audit plan. So pages 31 through 33 show the risk assessment for this upcoming fiscal year. And the way that we did this, internal audit worked with executive management, division management, trustees, just to get feedback on areas that they felt were risks for the agencies, either agency-wide or specific to their area. We received lots of feedback. Internal audit staff then took that feedback and presented processes that we can review to address the risks that were received. So on the next 3 pages, that's what you're seeing. So these are the processes that we felt could be reviewed by internal audit. The ratings, the risk ratings that you see were provided by the individuals who presented the risk associated to that process. And if there were multiple risks that went into a process, it's the average. The number you see is the average. And then we also tied it to the COSO elements. So that is what is on these pages. And then Sherry, if you can go back to page 28. So then we took those ratings, and that is how we developed the audit plan. So for fiscal year 2025, you're looking at our proposed audit plan. Those first few items are things that we cover. So the hiring and process documentation, board meetings, those are just general activities and projects that internal audit staff are involved in, but they do take hours. So we wanted to show those on the plan so that you see the hours associated with those. And then if there's a number in that risk column, those are the items that came from that risk assessment. And those are the processes that we will be reviewing for this year. And then at the bottom, you'll see an unscheduled reserve. So that's for anything that may come up, new projects, or if a high priority audit comes up that we need to work on, that we have hours reserved for that. We have listed each, not auditor, but space for an auditor, so not their name, but a slot for each auditor, so you can see which auditors will be working on which, like on the different projects, so you can see the resources that are devoted to each project. And then we also have when we expect to start those projects. And I'm going to go ahead and tie in the next item on the agenda. You'll see that there are currently 2 vacant positions, so we are working with a team of 3 right now. One of the positions is currently posted, so hopefully we will have at least 1 vacancy filled soon, and then we will work on filling the other one.
Do you have a timeline for that?
I do. So we actually have interviews for the 1 position scheduled this week. So hopefully if that goes well, we could have someone in here hopefully by October 1st. We were aiming for mid-September, but there's an issue with personnel and you can't hire anyone in mid-September of this year. So it's either September 1st or October 1st. And I'm not thinking we're going to make that September 1st deadline. So we're looking at October 1st. And then with the other position, we would hope to have them in here by December.
I was looking at your hours, and even at full staffing, what you've got planned plus your unallocated hours still puts everybody at 34.5 hours per week. That gets up to almost a 60-hour work week if you aren't able to get those two positions filled in a timely manner.
So when we initially made this risk assessment, we were fully staffed. It started with hours at 37.5 for everyone. And then as we started losing people, we tried to adjust it. It may not be a perfect adjustment, but it's just a best estimate of the hours that are going to be available for staff. And if you look at the bottom, I know the one in the Auditor 5 column is showing as working more hours than is what's in a given year. With being low staff, we expect some overtime to be required to get some projects done.
Ms. Hampton has her hand raised.
Is Bill on?
I am now. Yes, go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. To the audit committee, I guess it was approximately a year ago or so, the internal audit was changed to report to the board instead of the executive director. Since that time, Bill and I have been meeting with Kristen on an irregular basis at the office. I think JT will like that one. We discussed this issue of staffing, and she volunteered to just alert us as we go through the year where some of these schedules will change. And that's all.
And Kristen, I might mention too that, the shutdown of EMARS, I think just prohibits that middle of the month hiring, but I think we can break with tradition. If you have a candidate, we can hire them throughout the month. It doesn't have to be the start of the payroll, which is what we're all told as state employees. So we can, if you find a candidate in those interviews, we can probably work it around it. So
I appreciate that. I will let you know how this goes. So what we need from the audit committee in relation to this item is approval of the 2025 audit plan. Now, Sherry, if you go to the next page, there's also a proposal for fiscal year 2026 that is based on the risk assessment on the following pages. This could change when we do the risk assessment next year. Other items could become a priority, and so there could be an adjustment, but this is just to give an idea of what potentially for the following year. And there's also, you can see that box that says risks addressed as a part of all audits. Those are items that no matter what the audit is, we are covering these risks. But what we need from the audit committee today is approval of that fiscal year 2025 plan that was on page 28.
I'll make a motion. Yes, right. I'll make the motion, Bill.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
William, second.
Thank you, William. First and second, do we have further discussion on the proposed FY25 audit plan? Help me, I'm looking for any hands up. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Thank you, Kristen. You've got your plan.
We have a plan. Staff will be very excited. Something to work on.
And
So
thank
the-
you for the 26 proposed plan. That helps show us the focus and where you're headed.
And then with that, we are also looking for feedback as we come into the next year on the risk assessment, and how the risk assessment's presented, how the audit plan is presented, if there's anything that the committee would like to see differently, see added. We are definitely open to that. You can just let us know and we'll work it in.
Thanks so much. Do you
think,
want to go
Bill,
to?
we did talk about some reporting on the external review of audit. So somewhere there needs to be a line item. I wouldn't change it for this year, but somewhere a line item for follow-up procedures for that, because that will take time.
Are we ready for your budget report?
I believe we're ready. So this is the budget as of June 30th, 2024. So for the last fiscal year, internal audit came in at about 8% under budget. There was one item I wanted to point out, that's 847T. It was estimated at 20,000. We went a little over budget, but that 20,000 was actually an estimate for the fiscal year, and that 23,000 is actually a payment for 2 fiscal years. So that's the 2024 and 2025 payment. So that's why it went a little over. So we paid for 2025, that paid in May of last year. So that's why it hit that budget. And the 2024 actually was paid in June or July. So that's how they both got incorporated into the fiscal year.
Do we have any questions or comments on the budget?
I'd be really worried if our audit office was over budget, so.
All right.
We try not to do that.
Thank you for watching the numbers. Status of current internal audit projects. Still you, Kristen?
Still me. So this is the status as of also June 30th, 2024. So these are all of the projects that we worked on last year. If it says closed in that phase column, it's closed, it was completed. If it shows field work or not started, that carried over, it has carried over, and we are working on that in this fiscal year. With the exception of one of those items, 2024-10, which shows as not started, that is currently in process. All of the others that say field work, we're in the process of being wrapped up. It's just the audit report didn't get issued until July or August, so that's why it's not showing as closed. But I believe all of those have been closed and are actually going to be presented later on the agenda. So for
busy schedule.
I'm sorry. Busy schedule. Yes,
yes.
It was busy. So we had about 9,800 hours scheduled between all of the staff, and or 9,667. If you scroll down, Sherry, just a little, you can see that number. And we worked a total of about 9,800. So there was a little overtime with staff last year. So, and I would expect a similar overtime for this year, especially given the vacancies that we have at the moment.
Any questions for Kristen? All right, thank you for the update. We can roll into the actual audits issued.
We can. So this first audit is actually a reissue. We presented this at the last meeting. There were a few items that it was suggested we update some wording. So on pages 36 through 47, this is actually the red line version of this report. So it's the report that you saw last time, but with the changes tracked. That way you can see that the changes that were suggested were made. And then pages 48 through 59 are actually the updated reissued report. But we discussed this last time. I'm happy to go over it again if anyone had any questions. But we had mentioned we would include this again to show that the changes had been made.
And Kristen, would you like an approval on each one, or do you want to go through them all and then have them as a group?
Whichever is easier for you. We can go through them all and just one vote at the end, or we can stop with each one. Either way works for us. This one was actually voted on last time. So whether it's one vote or individual, this one has actually already been approved because it was approved at the last meeting.
All right.
Yes. Do they just want to see the reissued, the new wording?
Bill,
Right. Any questions?
As a suggestion, could we just say going to approve them as a full bucket unless there's one or more that we want to take out and look at separately? I think a process like that kind of takes care of the.
I think that can be efficient. All right, any questions on the legislative process? All right, go ahead to the next one, Kristen.
All right, the next one starts on page 60.
Bill, if I may real quick, just again, sorry to interrupt, Kristen, but we are going to send out a survey on legislative process coming up that I think addresses some of these things. So all board members, executive staff, etc. So I think it's good material here, and we're going to solicit some good material in the future. So thank you. Sorry, Kristen. Go ahead.
Thanks for the follow-up.
Yes, sir.
So this audit was performed by one of our auditors who's no longer with us. He worked on it. He put a lot of time into this, so we really appreciate the work that he did on it. This audit looked at the interest that's applied to member accounts. There was one reportable finding that involves the consistency of the rounding used when applying interest. And there are 3 other recommendations that we presented in a management letter. And Sherry, if you can go to page 62, we will look at that reportable finding. So the statutes don't necessarily provide clear guidance on the rounding that's to be used. And so when the auditor was looking at this, he just noticed that there seemed to be some inconsistency in the rounding when it was applied. We've worked with IT and we've worked with accounting. He may have talked to legal, but I don't want to jump in and say that he did. I don't want to say that he spoke to them if he didn't, but I know that we worked with IT and accounting, and we've just recommended that the statutes be reviewed if clarifying language is needed, that they work to get that addressed, and then that the method that's used in the system when a rounding is applied, that it be consistent. So that was this finding.
Kristen, can you go a little bit further on that? When you're saying the rounding wasn't consistent, was it at how many points on the right side of the decimal was it being rounded?
So there were some where it was being rounded at 4 places past and some where it was 2 places past.
Yeah.
So
Can I clarify that?
Yes, please.
The calculation was always at 2 paces, 2 decimal places past. The policies at times called for 4 places, but when we looked at the calculation itself, it was being done on 2. But our internal policy said 4. That was some of the inconsistencies that we needed to clean up.
Thank you, Mike and Kristen. I will say I've always thought that the bankers made the majority of their money on the right side of the decimal point.
Yeah. Right to left, the takedown.
Are there any other questions on that item? If not, Sherry, if you can go to page 66.
Yeah.
Ms. Eads?
Yeah. Kristen, one question, and do you know, and maybe you don't know, are these rounding issues consistent with, I would think like Kentucky state taxes would have a rounding issue for calculating refunds, for example, and there may be other agencies. Do you know if our rounding is different from theirs, either by policy or by practice, or?
I am not familiar with their policy, how the other agencies round.
So if I may, so Department of Revenue has specific rounding. In our instance, there was nobody that was harmed related to this rounding, and it was a de minimis amount of money. We can all share the kind of the statute, but it was 2 decimals, and I think that's what we did. And the process document clearly was different than that. So there was no member harmed, and Department of Revenue, which I know very well, has different policies, and it's really based on material. So it's not consistent among state government, and we just had an inconsistency among the process versus what we did. But again, no member was harmed. We checked that initially. So thank you for.
So you just view it as internal to this agency, consistency between policy and operation, not across other agencies.
Well, I mean, again, the Department of Revenue has different processes, and we should have process documents be updated, but given the amount of time that we had to go back and after implementation, that's kind of what I assessed was the issue. But again, no member was harmed in terms of this calculation.
And I'll confirm that's what we looked at. We were looking at consistency of our policy and then
Yep.
not the other state agencies, but consistency between our policy and then the actual activity.
Yeah, we totally agree on that. Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sherry, 66, please. So these are the other items. These were not considered significant enough to be in the report, but they were other recommendations that we presented to management as a result of this audit. So this item, when we were looking, we actually watched the individuals perform their tasks, and we realized that while the system is set up so that if one person enters the interest rate, another person, that same individual can't approve that rate. Another person has to approve it. However, if the individual in one entry enters it and then also clicks approve, it would let the same person enter and approve. So a ticket was put in, that was addressed, but that's what this item is related to. And then we will go to the next page. So another thing that we looked at with this audit in particular, one of the things that took some time with this is we had some, don't want to say difficulty, but that may be the best thing, just trying to verify these numbers. But working with IT, we were able to get a report for them that showed us what we were expecting to see, that actually gave us the data we needed to complete this audit. And we recommended that those reports be utilized by the accounting staff when they are working on their year-end close. And we spoke to Mike and his team, and they agreed that these reports could be useful and are going to look to use those, or I think something similar in the future. And then if you will go to the next page, this related to, when we were reviewing the statutes, we saw that the interest rate for Tier 1 members is set by the board. So for Tier 2, it was set by statute. Tier 1 is set by the board. And this was done, it was set back in 2004. The rate that was set agrees to what is set for Tier 2. We didn't have any issue with that. We simply raised the issue with the CEOs, letting them know that the Tier 1 rate is set by the board, and asking them if they felt that this was something that should be reviewed periodically, just as a confirmation that the board is doing their part in setting the rate. It was suggested that this be brought to the boards on an annual basis. So that's where our recommendation comes from. It came from that discussion with the CEOs. So that's what this item is about. And that's everything from this audit. Are there any questions on those items? If not, we can move to the next one. Sherry, it's on the next page. So this audit looked at outstanding employer invoices. This is an item that has been noted in the past by audits conducted by the APA. So we wanted to look into it. We had 2 reportable findings, and then we had a few items that were not reportable that we sent out in a management letter. So Sherry, if you can go to page 71, I'll start with the first reportable findings. So the current process right now is if there is an outstanding employer invoice, so these would be invoices where either an employer owes us money or it could be money that is owed, that we owe back to the employer. Once it is outstanding for 120 days, it is supposed to be turned over to the Office of Legal Services. That's the way the current process is written. We've talked to staff. That process is not being followed. There were a few reasons, but ultimately it just seemed like, given current staffing levels and the work that goes into reviewing these, that process just wasn't, it's not feasible the way that it's written. And Sherry, if you can scroll down a little, go to the next page, please. So we've recommended that that management just review the timeline, review the process, and determine if 120 days is the right amount of time to push this out to legal, or if something needs to be something changed in the policy. Another suggestion that we had, we worked with management. We didn't just come up with this on our own. After talking to management and discussing the needs, we've also recommended considering the benefit of possibly having an individual who is dedicated to working on collecting these outstanding invoices. As you can, in the effect, you can see that as of March, the outstanding invoices were 9.6 million. And while some of that is related to litigation, that still leaves about 4.5 million of outstanding invoices that could potentially be collected. So that was our recommendation with this item. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, I want to back up to page 71. And I'm trying to operate from memory. It seems like the reports that I've been seeing on the C side for outstanding invoices had a total of somewhere around $3.5–4 million, I think, give or take. I guess part of me is curious as to why you have appears to be so many outstanding invoices that would even be on the K side, since you're not dealing with the number of employers as we are. But the average outstanding invoice is 846 days. That is awful, it's awfully concerning to me. We need to figure out some kind of way to go after these dollars. It's only fair to the other employers and the beneficiaries as well. Like I said, I was just a little shocked at those numbers.
We can reasonably look at some of that data and kind of peel it apart and get you some information on which ones are the oldest. Employer pension spiking is a recurring issue. We have a ton of outstanding litigation on them. They had 365 days to pay before any interest applies.
Mm-hmm.
So let me look at some of that data, peel out some things, and see which types of invoices are really the culprits there, and adding to that.
Yeah.
846, is that what we said?
Yeah, so Kristen, I know I'm signing letters every day to, try to encourage them or enforce them to pay these. Kristen, you obviously have this data, so help us through that, 846, what do you see?
I can pull the data that we used and I can send it over. I don't want to speak in absolutes right now. I'm not the auditor who actually conducted this
Yeah.
audit. So I would have to go back and really look at it. I'm sure the auditor who did this could probably tell you immediately what this is because she's very familiar with it. I've looked at several audits. I would want to go back and confirm what we were looking at. I felt like we pulled out some of those items that like pension spiking, and I feel like those weren't included here, but I could be.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to Mr. Cheatham's point. Are they de minimis amounts of money, the material? Because clearly, the average day catches everyone's eye, but we'd like to maybe drill on that. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know we have a report that shows that. I will be happy to send it. I'm going to make a note right now. I'll be happy to send it out to the audit committee and management so that you can see what we were looking at.
Mike, I'm sure you all have it. What we tend to get in our committee meetings anyway are basically summaries of the top 10. I'd really be interested in seeing a full list and how old some of these numbers are. There's several avenues out there that I'm sure we can pursue to get these invoices paid. Not the least of which is withholding federal funding or grant funding for some of these, if they're city, county, and school systems. But we're floating nearly $10 million worth of debt for an average of 2.5 years.
Yeah. So appreciate that. I mean, the 846 days clearly is eye-popping, and we're not really prepared to talk about intercepting today, but as you say, that's in the statute. So maybe a separate meeting in the future, we're thinking through it on how we would do it. But the intercept that's a tough one. So.
Well,
Can I ask if another level needs to be considered? Do you know if all these amounts are finalized as to whether it was still being, when you get the report from the employer and it doesn't match the data, then there's variances which cause balances, and then staff works with the employer in order to reconcile those. Sometimes that takes a while. Are you taking these amounts as finalized, or are they just amounts that show up, which could be still to be reconciled?
So these are amounts that are not finalized. They're still potentially being processed to determine a final amount, which goes back to the process potentially not being feasible, where you try to escalate it after 120 days, because it may take longer than that to work with the employer to determine the actual amount outstanding.
And I think peeling those off would give us a better look at what is truly an outstanding invoice.
I don't know if we have the data to say which ones are completely finalized. I could share it with another group, and I'm sure we could get that. But on the one report we have, I'm not sure we have that, but I can work with another group to try to get that added.
DeJuan, would you want to comment?
Yeah, I just want to comment. Just reviewing some of the information, a lot of those, and I know Mr. Cheatham made a point as far as a lot of them KERS, some of those are still referring to the actuarially accrued liability invoices. Some of them with Kentucky Community River Care, like I said, some of them are in litigation, and it's a very large amount. So that's being accounted for, in some of the cases as well. But my staff alone, we have started to pick this process back up. It was a point in time where we had someone designated to invoices, but as legislative changes and things came across, we had to kind of reallocate resources to do different things. But now that we have freed up some time, we have a person working on this now. We do have a lot of older invoices that, that's what we're starting out with to try to get those paid as soon as possible. And we do have some cases as well to where we have already went through the full process, but some of them just have not went to legal as they should have, but we are reviewing those cases as well. So those cases will be going to legal soon. But, you know, we are working on this. We do know, we are aware that, you know, some of it has gotten out of hand. But, you know, we are dedicated right now to get this problem resolved as far as the outstanding invoices and the time frame of them. So.
Would it be appropriate to have a follow-up on this issue as far as 6 months and see what the progress is? Or is it a 1 year? I don't know what's reasonable expectation, but sounds like it would be appropriate to have a follow-up here.
Mr. Lamb has his hand raised.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I think Dwan answered the question Mr. Cheatham had about the large amount in K that's assumed from this audit report. And yeah, the AALC amounts mostly report related to Kentucky River Cares, nearly $4 million. And then there's also, not all of that is over 120 days old, but it's a large amount. And then there's also nearly 1.5 million past due in standard sick leave. So there are some large K balances as well. I will say we have been looking at these a little bit. And if you take the large amounts that are out of litigation, if you take the litigated amounts out, it is not as serious as the numbers here show. Yes, there are things that need to be done, and there are some problem employers, and DeWan's team's working on that. But when you take those big numbers out that are in litigation or being pursued by legal now, it's not as scary as those numbers look. But we would be happy to provide a follow-up. The amount of time we spent working on these AR invoices, I think we could probably do something at the next audit committee meeting. If we can't, for sure in 6 months, we could give you a really good detail of where we've progressed.
Well, and thank you. And maybe we talk about the concept of intercepting money. That's a tough one for me. So we're working on it.
Just making some of these employers aware that is out there. I would venture to bet most aren't aware that is out there.
And it's been tough. It's typically a strategy you do for paying a bill. It's not proactive. It's never spent or intended to be used. So maybe we could, I don't know if this is the entity, but that's one that we got to think about, right? Because this is what we're going at. These, yeah. So look to advice from you all.
Ms. Hampton has her hand raised.
Yes, Lynn.
My question maybe is indirectly connected to this conversation that Ryan and that we were just having, and that is, do we report to PPOB on the delinquent accounts?
I guess the answer, help me out, Aaron, Becca. I mean, indirectly they ask specific ones, but no, we don't report this data. Yeah.
Okay, I know that sounds like tattling, but I wonder if that might be helpful. The PPOB is aware of the agencies. I'm sure many of them are connected one way or another.
I mean, they're certainly aware of, the headline ones, right? And we all know those. I would love for the board to give us some direction on concept of intercepting and how we chase these down, right? So Kristen's identified a problem. We've been thinking about it for a long time. So, some guidance from the board before we maybe go to the PPOB and ask for a legislative change.
I don't think taking their grant money is a good thing to do. I think that causes problems bigger than these. But I just keep thinking that if PPOB knew who these were, they see them more often than we do. I mean, some of the legislators. But I will be totally open to getting the opinion of staff on that as an additional report to PPOB.
Well, I will mention one thing. I mean, we've been meeting with legislators, and there are certain legislators that want to help us solve these problems. I don't want to necessarily cite specific entities, but there are some that want to help us out. So we have been doing that, maybe just not in that, meeting that we're going to have this afternoon at PPOB. Yeah. So point well taken, and we are working on it.
I'm sure between Mike and Dwan, but all I'm looking for is a plan, to address the issue. You've identified the issue. Let's come up with a plan to address it. It shouldn't really be rocket science to figure that one out. But at the same time, you gotta have a carrot, you gotta have a stick sometimes.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So maybe we could just kind of talk about the problems that we have, internally, getting invoices paid, getting invoices agreed to, that may make some sense. Okay. Yeah, we'll chew on it and circle back. Not sure audit committee or, whatever committee we need to go to, but we'll definitely work on that.
I think audit committee probably certainly needs to get an update on it down the road. But in the meantime, Bill, that seems like an issue for the finance committee on our side to keep an eye on as we figure out a process to deal with it.
Well, we can certainly have it as an item of discussion. I do think it would be beneficial for this whole conversation to have these numbers layered rather than in total as in the report. Take a step further than what was the audit focus and take the big litigation numbers out, the different categories, and so that you know what your true focus for long-term offenders versus litigants versus reconciliation. I'm not sure what those layers are, but I'm just saying I think those layers are here, and it would help us if staff would layer this information so that then when we come up with discussion with the board, management has those types of information ready.
Thank you.
So I had mentioned that we have that, I'm pretty sure we have that information that you're talking about in the report. We could break it out. I had indicated I would send that out. If it's acceptable to the committee, the individual who worked on this audit will be back with us next week. If you can give us a little while, I can make that be the first thing she works on when she gets back, to break that report out with more detail and showing those different layers, and then have her send that out to the committee.
I think that'd be beneficial.
Just a question. Given the short staff in audit, is this also something that accounting could do?
Well, she has it, so it won't take her long, but me going in and messing with her report will probably take longer than her just going in and sending it out.
Okay.
So I don't think it will take her much time, but I'll say if she comes in and gets started and we realize we're having issues, I'll work with Mike and other staff to see what we can do to get that report to you.
Great.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the outstanding employer invoice audit?
Well, we had a couple of other. If you can go to the next page, or page 73, actually.
I wanted to provide Ms. Eves a chance. She has her hand raised to have her question.
Yes.
You're muted, Ms. Eves.
Thank you, Sherry, and my apologies. It seems to me that we, in the absence of having a consistent policy and a consistently enforced policy and timeframes that we can look to and count on and rely on, and I know these are individual circumstances, and I know these are like the worst situations that don't lend themselves to consistency, but it seems like our risk is going up in litigation if these move to litigation and the discovery shows that we've treated one organization one way, another organization a different way, a time frame, for organization A, 365 days to pay, another organization 500 days to pay, that we're exposing ourselves and increasing our risk for losing in litigation or getting not not favorable verdicts from judges who look at the of an up and down process or no process at all. So I'm in agreement with the idea that we dig down and find out what's going on, and as a risk exposure minimization effort to see if we can come up with something that would be a recommended process that we think we can follow and enforce and count on.
Thank you. Good points, Ms. Eves. Kristen, will you want to continue?
I will, and to somewhat address that, that's our hope behind recommendation number 1 with this item is to review that process and that policy and see what changes need to be made and updated so that a more consistent process can be applied. But so finding number 2, Sherry, if you'll go to page number, the next page that has the recommendations. So when we were looking at this, there were just a few things that for speed, for getting the audit out, it just looked like more research needed to be done by staff, and we could have held the audit open while the research was being done, but we weren't sure that would, what would be the benefit of that, where we could just issue the audit. Staff knows that they needed to work on this. That way management could see what was, what we had found. And so rather than holding the audit open, waiting for the research to be done, the response could be that the research would be conducted. So that dealt with, there were some permissions on the access to invoices in the system. We just suggested that those permission levels be reviewed to make sure that staff have the permissions that they need, no more, no less, to do their job. Similar to how we look at access to systems across KPPA. There were some issues noted. There's a workflow so that when an invoice hit 120 days, it would automatically kick over to legal and be escalated. But that module was never, it didn't ever really work as intended, and there had been multiple, they looked at it multiple times to see if they wanted to get the module started, but with other things going on, it just hasn't happened. So this was just us recommending that you look into this. If it's going to be utilized, see if we can get it working correctly. If we're going to take another method, let's find the other method to figure out the best way to escalate the invoices. And then there was an issue that we noted. So if an employer merges with another employer, or they're consolidated into another employer, so if employer A and employer B are now going to be merged, and employer A has outstanding invoices, but they're merging with employer B couldn't see those invoices. They couldn't pay them. So that's part of some of these outstanding invoices is the employers have been merged or consolidated, and the new employer can't see the invoices that are now assigned to them. So working to get that issue resolved. If there are no questions on that item, Sherry, if you can go to page 81. So these were some recommendations that came as a result of this audit, but again, they didn't rise to the level of reportable finding, but we still wanted to communicate the information to management. So when an invoice is changed or canceled or disputed, the processing requires a comment to be left in the system so that we know why the invoice was canceled, written off. So we found that there weren't always comments, so we suggested that that this be a required item. So in the system, if you waive an employer invoice, the system requires that you leave a comment. It will not let you proceed without leaving that comment. So we were just suggesting that maybe that same type of hard stop be implemented for these invoices. And then there are some items that are just automatically written off by the system. If it's under a certain amount, the system can automatically write it off. So we had asked management to consider, would it be beneficial that when the system does that, that it also include a comment, automatically written off, based on policy requirements. So those were the suggestions for these items. And then Sherry, if you'll go to the next page. The other thing that came out of this is there's been discussion on, lots of discussion on whether we can charge penalty and interest to some of these outstanding employer invoices. This is something staff has been working on for quite a while. And so we just to keep it, to show that we had covered everything, we just wanted to note that staff should continue researching that and update the board when they have an answer on what can be done.
How are they not penalties and interest?
Wow, are you talking?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just asked how are they not subject to penalties and interest?
It's similar to what I was going to say. This is never make assumptions, but I was always of the impression that if you weren't paying, we were at least charging you an interest rate. So why pay if that's the case?
Well, some of it goes back to the previous one, it's the 846 days, right? So, we can charge it and we can demonstrate it, but they may dispute it and not pay, right? And so then we have years of dispute. It goes to Michael in terms of, trying to chase it down. So I understand there's a little bit difference in policy. So Rebecca and Aaron, I'll look to you on, when we do and don't. But that's previous document. That's why we have all this duration time in part.
Mike and I have been working for quite some time with legal. I believe, Mike, our plan is to bring something to the CRS board, to the KRS board, and then ultimately the KPPA board these September meetings. That will give you kind of lay out what is allowed and what is not allowed statutorily. It is really complicated, what is and what isn't. But there's more information. There's more details coming. So Kristen's right. We have been working on it for quite a while. It was a really complicated question, but we are super close to being ready for that. Mike, do you have anything to add to that file?
Yeah, the plan is to bring a memo to the C&K board for information and then have a KPPA board approve the recommendations in there related to the categories of where we can and cannot charge interest on past due invoices. As part of that, we also hope to have dollar amounts associated with that as of a certain date. Yes, it has been a very long time that we've been working on that, but legal has done extensive research on every type of invoice and statute that addresses contributions. And so we have that summarized now, and we'll present that in September.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other outstanding employer invoice questions or comments? All right, Kristen.
So we've also issued an audit that looked at the employer contribution process. If you've taken note of the audits that we've issued, you can see we have done a lot of work with Dwan and his group the past few months, and they have been great to work with. They have answered all of our questions. We really appreciate all the time he's put into working with us on these. So this audit in particular, we did not have any reportable findings that were noted. We did have one management letter item. It's on page 89. So when we looked at this audit, we saw there were a few items where some changes had been made and the supporting documents to show why that change was made to the account, the information wasn't uploaded into the system. When we pointed this out, they immediately uploaded the items. So this issue has been corrected. And the only thing so our recommendation is just asking management to send out a reminder to their staff. They send out frequent reminders, reminding them about the process, but just the next time they send out the reminder, to just include a statement on the importance of ensuring that supporting documentation is uploaded and that employers are contacted in a timely manner if any changes are made. That was the only thing we noted with this audit. Any questions on this?
All right, sounds good.
So we'll go. So as much fun as I've had reviewing all of our issued audits, I am going to actually turn this over and let Will discuss this audit.
Hello, good morning. I'm presenting our completed audit for reviewing the refund process. During this project, we worked with membership support, member services, disability survivor benefits, and payroll. And everyone we worked with was really great, answering questions, helping us out, getting us the information we needed. During this project, no issues were noted. We do not have a management letter associated with this. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the refund process or this project if you have any.
Well, we're glad to hear no findings, no comments, that things went well then.
Yes.
See, I let him present the audit where everything good.
All right, Will, we're gonna ask for you to be assigned a whole lot of audits next year.
Okay. Well, I'm the only one here currently, so
that would be
aside
why.
from Kristen. No.
Will was looking at that audit plan feeling like he's going to be really busy.
So I think we're ready to entertain a motion to accept the audits as presented on interest added to member accounts, outstanding employer invoices, contributions, and refunds. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
First and second. Any other conversation, discussion, or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. All right, we have adoption of quite a bit of work. We appreciate all that work and everyone that contributed to it. And now we go to back to Mr. Prince for professional articles.
Yes, we have two professional articles today. One is a bit dense and will have a longer explanation, and the other one is quick and easy. So the first one is Fundamentals of the COSO Framework, Building Blocks for Integrated Internal Controls. The COSO Integrated Framework provides guidance for how organizations can implement controls to prevent, detect, and manage fraud risk related to external financial reporting. This article provides a breakdown of the 5 pillars and 17 principles of the COSO framework, as well as how to best implement and use this framework as a foundation for internal controls and fraud deterrence. The 5 pillars of the COSO framework are: 1, the control environment, referring to the overall culture of internal controls and established from the top down in an organization. A control environment in accordance with the COSO framework demonstrates that by having a commitment to integrity and ethical values, a board that is independent and oversees internal controls, and by establishing accountability for control responsibilities. Risk assessment. This pillar stipulates the need for ongoing risk assessments based on the organization's internal control system, performed by internal personnel or third parties. Risk identified through these assessments should be tracked, including likelihood and impact of risk, and a timeline, plan of action, and a responsible area or individuals. These assessments should be performed yearly and updated as risks appear or are mitigated. Control activities. This pillar addresses the processes and activities performed to mitigate risk and maintain strong internal controls. The principles related to this pillar center around aligning control activities to the organization's objectives and specific needs. Information and communication. The fourth pillar of COSO addresses the need for appropriate, consistent, and timely information distribution to relevant stakeholders. The related principles are that the organization uses quality data and information to support control objectives, and the company communicated relevant information in a clear and complete manner. And then monitoring activities. The final pillar of the COSO framework involves monitoring, measuring, and reporting on the company's internal control system. Regular and ongoing evaluations of the system occur, and any deficiencies are reported appropriately and timely. The article also included the steps that recommended to implement a COSO framework of a planning and outlining the how the COSO framework will fit for your organization, a period of evaluation and documentation of how your organization is currently performing and how you currently fit into the COSO framework, a period of remediation to adjust what you are doing as an organization to better fit into how the COSO framework recommends, and then testing and reporting to be ongoingly monitoring how your organization is matching up with this framework. I know that was a dense article and a breakdown. Are there any questions or comments about that one?
Not yet.
If we don't have any questions about that one, we can move on to the second article, which is much quicker and easier to digest than the COSO framework. It is an audit committee of performance evaluation guideline and example survey questionnaire. It is based on leading practices to assist an audit committee in performing a self-assessment of its own performance. It is a very thorough example of a self-assessment survey. It gives a great baseline and example of how to set up self-assessments for an audit committee. Are there any comments or questions about the second article?
I have a comment. So we included this article based on when we were going over the internal audit charter at a previous meeting. There's a section where it says the audit committee may perform an evaluation. It used to be a requirement that the evaluation be performed. It's no longer a requirement, but it is suggested. And the committee had asked if there was any guidance or a template on what that evaluation would look like. And there is. And so this is why this article has been presented, because this is that template.
Excellent. Thank you for the follow-up.
Anything else about either of the articles?
No, I think they're very good reference and very on point, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that concludes our agenda. Is there any other items that anyone wants to bring forward? Hearing none. No further business, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
everyone's efforts and support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.